I'm Shannon Maer. Thanks for joining me. Today I want to take a look at a very interesting method that I like to utilize in DAZ Studio. This helps me to finesse the figure into a very natural and lifelike position. All along, the figure is actually responding to the camera movements itself. As you can see here, the waist, the neck, the head, the eyes, they're following along, but more than that, they're actually responding each time I move the camera. This might look a little magical at first, but don't worry, it's not all that complicated. I'm going to walk you through this, but first, why don't we take a quick look at the assets that I'm using? I know a lot of you like to follow along, and maybe it'll help to give you some ideas. So let's move over to the DAZ 3D website. This is the character that we're currently working with in our scene. Her name is Inigo. She is created for Victoria 7, which is a Genesis 3 female model. In one of my prior tutorials, I discussed the importance of using the Victoria 7 for certain models. Let's just take a quick glance so you know where it is. This is my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Shannon Maer. And it is right here. It says DAZ Studio Characters, Beginner's Guide to Figures, and this will explain exactly why it says for Victoria 7, how to apply it, and what you need. And also, so you don't forget, at any time you can subscribe to my channel. That button is located right here on my page, or you'll see it right below if you're watching it in the regular video player. And now let's take one real quick look at some of her assets. I found her to be a very nicely detailed figure, great skin texture, a very straightforward, simple, natural face. So it's actually a pleasure to work with. And now why don't we move over to the next asset. This is the wardrobe that we're using, bra and panty lingerie set for Genesis 3 females. I like this set. I think it's very simply cut. I like that the cups are actually low cut. Usually they come very high cut for my taste. And overall, I think it's a beautifully textured and very, very natural and very realistic wardrobe set. And lastly, we have Elegance hair. You can see that they have a very nice ode to Jessica Rabbit here with her outfit and her fiery red hair. This is actually a Genesis 2 female figure set. It applies very nicely to the Genesis 3 model. Some do, some don't, but this worked very well. When you apply it, it'll ask you what it is. You'll see a pop-up, and it'll just have two drop-down lists. So you'll say it's a Genesis 2 female, and also it is, as an asset, it is long hair, and it'll apply it very nicely to the scene. One real quick look through here. Comes with multiple colors. It does have some controls for the hair positioning. You can shorten it a bit. You can move it around a bit. It doesn't have tremendous versatility in changing the actual hairstyle itself. So long as this is the general look that you're going for, it's a very nice set of hair to work with. So now let's get back to the fun stuff. We're back in DAZ Studio here. We do have the character still completely rigged, and now I'm going to explain to you what it's doing. In one of the prior tutorials, I did explain to you how to connect the eyes to the camera. So you can see over in our scene here, we did add a camera, which if you don't know how to do that, I do have it in a prior tutorial, but really quickly, you can go over here. You want to go into the tab Lights and Camera. The editor is selected here. Make sure camera is selected on this tab. Hit here, add camera, and it'll add one to the scene. And I just default to name it as camera 1. So over here, your default is perspective view. So that's the camera that it's using. It's non-recordable. Again, we addressed this in more detail in a prior video, just so that you know that's there. So that's why I'm moving through that part of it rather quickly. So to quickly readdress the eyes, as we did previously, I have my standard selection tool here. It's actually called Universal Tool. Now, what you want to do is, let me switch back to my regular camera here. So what you want to do is select the eye itself. You will see that it highlights in the scene. Make sure that the proper feature is selected. It says left eye here. Now if we click on parameters, we do want to work with general, so there's a few different options here. If you didn't move off it, it'll probably default to general. And right here you will see point at. And what we want to do is select camera 1. And when we do that, the eye will follow the camera. So make sure you are on camera 1. Because naturally, if you're on a different camera, you won't see it moving because it is looking at camera 1. And I did the exact same thing for the other eye as well. And now, to take this a step further, this is where we got a little bit creative here. Now, let me just back up a little bit, and I want to point out how much of her is moving. You can clearly see that her waist is rotating. Not only the camera is rotating, but her waist is actually twisting. You can clearly see the eyes following us, but let me move in a little bit so you can see that. Oops, all right. So not only are our eyes following us, but her head is following us as well. And there's one more thing that I have going on here, which is actually even a step more interesting. Her arms are also responding to the camera itself, so you can see them twisting about. It's very subtle. You can, choose how subtle you want that to be. I'll get into that in a moment. That's actually pretty neat. I think you'll enjoy that, and you can get actually very creative with that. So after connecting the eyes to the camera, I also connected the neck. I chose not to do the actual head itself in this because of the perspective that I was using. So depending on your perspective, you can feel it out. If you have the character leaning forward or you're leaning back, you may get some nice results, and some of them may be a little bit too dramatic for you. So that's why I chose the neck. That is one thing that I like a lot about the Genesis 3 model as opposed to the prior Genesis 2 and the Genesis figure. They added entirely new section here, so there's two separate controls for the neck itself. So in this scene, I actually chose the second one up. I selected that. The bottom one down didn't give me quite the movement that I was looking for. So I chose this section, and again you can see it here. Once I clicked on it, it's selected in my scene. It says neck upper. We go into parameters. Again, it's defaulting to general, point at, and we select camera 1. So that's very straightforward and very simple, and you get some very nice results. So the purpose of this is after I set up a general pose, I have her pretty close in the position that I want. So in this instance, I have her legs a certain way, the twist of the body, the arms a little bit back behind her, right? Now I want to finesse it. I want her to be a little bit sultry. I want her to really look like she's looking at you. So that's why I decided to connect some of her features to the camera movement. So I can simply move the camera, tilt it a little bit, and kind of search for that moment where she's giving you a sultry look. She really looks like she's connecting with the viewer, and I find that it's actually a lot of fun to work this way as well. So you always know you're onto something if you find it fun to do. Okay, so now speaking of fun to do, this is a little bit more complicated, but I really think you're going to enjoy it, and I think it's going to open up a whole new world of creativity for you. So this is dealing with the arms. Now, simply connecting the arms to the camera was not giving me the results that I was looking for in this scene. In another scene, perhaps if she's holding a scepter and she has it forward, she's holding it towards the viewer, that would be a great way, just simply connect it to the camera. But instead, what I did was I took it a step further. Now, let me close this up in the scene here, and I'm going to open up the camera. And what you're actually going to find here is I have two objects. They're called null 1 and null 2. Now, a null is an invisible object. It's just really an effector that you can use to navigate, connect things to in your scene. It's invisible, so it holds no tangible form. Now, to create one of these, what you're going to do is you're going to go up to Create. It's just above your view here. It's the main menu listing where it says DAZ Studio, File, Edit, and then it says Create. So click on Create, and you're going to scroll down to New Null. So simply click on that. Now it's defaulting to asking for null 3 because I have 1 and 2 in the scene. I'll hit Accept. So now it added it to the scene. I'm going to change back to our perspective view so we're not affecting our camera position. And let's find that in the scene. Now it places it at the default axes here. Now it's not connected to anything. And again, it's invisible. So it's just simply an effector in the scene itself. You can move it around, you can locate it, and that's what I did, and I connected it to the arms. So actually for each separate arm, I created an effect. So I'm gonna delete out the prior two nulls that we have in the scene here, and we'll start fresh. So now the arms are not connected to anything. We have added our new null to the scene, and like we were doing before, we can move it around the scene and it has no effect. So now what I'm going to do is with the selection tool here, I'm going to select the forearm. That's what I chose in the scene here because I didn't like that it turned the hand so far or other parts, but the forearm worked very nicely. So I select the forearm. You see it highlighted over here in the scene. It says left forearm bend. And now we can click on parameters. Again, we're on general, so the same thing as connecting the eyes of the camera, but we're going to connect it to the null. Now, let me just drag that into view here. Okay, so it is connected to currently none. We have the option for the camera, and we'll select null 3. Now I'm going to hit accept. Now it is pointing at the null that we placed into the scene. So if I rotate this around, we can take a look at exactly what it's going to do. I'm going to select the null, and now if I navigate the null, the arm itself follows the position of the null. So let me move that a little bit more to the side. So if we raise it up, the arm follows it. And remember, it's the forearm itself that is following it in the scene. So additionally, what I did was I created exactly the same thing for the other arm, and it was connected to a separate null, and I was able to position that in a very specific position that complemented the overall pose. So now if you recall, what we're working with is the perspective view. So we switched off of our main camera. I'm going to toggle back to that. So if we switch back to camera 1, this is our general pose. And again, remember this arm right here is now connected to this null. Now what you're going to find is if I rotate this, that arm is actually not moving. The head, the waist, the eyes, everything else is moving, but as I rotate the camera here, nothing is moving. That's because it is not connected to the camera. So now that's what we need to do. So over here in our scene tab, what we want to do is actually parent the null to our camera. So we can select on the null and we have an option. We can either right click on it and you'll get the option change null parent. You can click on that, or as I've recently discovered, and you could also do this with multiple items at the same time, you can select it, simply drag it on top, and now it is parented to the camera. So what we now have is we have the forearm, which is pointing at the null, and the null itself is connected to the camera. So now I switched back to my final project. It has both nulls in the scene, and the further away that you place those nulls for the arms, you'll find that you get a much more dramatic range of movement while you're moving the camera. I'm on perspective view right now. I'm just showing you where the nulls are in relation to the arms. So this is for the left arm, and this one over here, this was placed forward for the right arm because I wanted them to be posed and behave a bit differently. So now let me switch back to the actual active camera, and again you can see both of these arms moving in the scene itself. Now lastly, this is as easy as the neck it was itself. What I chose to do was connect the waist. Now if I select this here in our scene, you will see pelvis gets selected. You get different results depending on what you connect here. I didn't want to connect it up too high because it was bending her figure too much. So for the general pose I was looking for, this was the part of the body that I wanted to connect. So that's selected. Parameters, general, and you connect. It'll default to none. Connect camera 1, you hit accept, and there we go. I hope that you enjoyed today's tutorial. So for anybody that's new, my YouTube channel is loaded with tutorials, DAZ Studio and Photoshop. If you're interested in painting methods, I have plenty of that. If you're new to DAZ Studio, I have DAZ Studio Beginner Tutorial Get Started Fast. I also have a lighting tutorial. This starts with presets. And if you're interested in painting, I do have Harley Quinn and a skin painting tutorial for Photoshop as well. And we also have dragons here and much, much more. So there's always many more tutorials on the way, so remember to subscribe. Until next time, thanks again for joining me.